Christopher Nolan is finally back. It's been 3 years since his seven-time Oscar-winning film Oppenheimer was released, and honestly, if I have to wait any longer than 3 years for a Nolan film, I start getting antsy. Withdrawal symptoms pretty much start setting in. But has Nolan taken on too much this time, tackling the foundational text of Western literature, Homer's Odyssey, or has he made the greatest historical epic of the 21st century? Let's get into it. The film covers a lot of ground, just like Homer's poem, which is broken up into 24 books. We start in Ithaca, where King Odysseus has been gone for 20 years, off fighting the Trojan War. His wife Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, and his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, are inundated with suitors hoping to win Penelope's hand and take the throne. Telemachus is worried too. He's almost of age to become king himself. One of the key suitors is Antinous, played by Robert Pattinson. The suitors are allowed to linger around the castle under Zeus's law. You must treat every guest as you'd like to be treated, in case they're a god walking among mortals, meaning you're obligated to offer food and shelter to anyone who arrives. This turns out to be a key thematic through line for the entire film. The film spends a lot of time setting up in this early stretch, and I definitely felt like we were slowly climbing a hill, waiting for the rush on the way down. I was surprised how long we lingered in Ithaca in the first act, and even more surprised that the very first face you see in Nolan's new film is Travis Scott. The story then pivots, in time and place, as Nolan loves to do, to Odysseus' own journey, following him as he tries to make it home after 10 years at Troy. True to form, Nolan doesn't plod through this in chronological order. The middle section jumps between the Trojan horse, Odysseus, and his men's voyage home by sea, and the growing impatience of the suitors and Telemachus back in Ithaca. The first time we see the Trojan horse, half buried in the sea, it's a genuinely shocking sight, probably because of how starkly different it is from 2004's Troy, which had the whole thing on wheels and made getting it into the city look very easy. Elliot Page's Sinon is there to convince the Trojans that it's a gift, while just a few feet away, soldiers are crammed inside the wooden giant on top of each other, pissing and shitting on each other basically. Some of them will even die before it's opened. Odysseus then tells his own story of the journey home through conversations with an unnamed woman on an island, played by Charlize Theron. He's noticeably older now, and all his men are missing, but he can't quite seem to remember where they've gone. Fairly early on, we also get to see the first real test for Odysseus and his crew, the Cyclops. This is one of the best sequences in the film. The creature looks fully real and believable, and seeing in IMAX his hand grabbing men out of the darkness is genuinely terrifying. From there, the film moves through a series of escalating trials that gradually kill off Odysseus' men, a battle with giants on one island, a strange woman played by Samantha Morton offering endless food in a rundown cottage, and a descent into the underworld to speak with the dead. Just like Homer's book, the film is very episodic, and also like the book, some episodes land harder than others. The final stretch sees Odysseus finally reach Ithaca, unsure how he'll be received after 20 years away. He arrives under a false identity as some sort of beggar, and tells his son to organise a feast for the suitors, and enters under the protection of Zeus's law. He speaks with Penelope without revealing who he actually is. She then sets a trial. Whoever can string Odysseus' old bow and shoot an arrow through a row of axes may marry her. Every suitor tries and fails, until the beggar steps up and does it effortlessly. He then turns and takes on the entire room of suitors, and this closing sequence is jaw-droppingly tense. Even if you already know how it ends, you're still not entirely convinced one man can take on that many suitors. So first things first, you need to see this film in IMAX if you possibly can. I saw it in IMAX, not 70mm, but IMAX, and it just demands the biggest screen and format available. I genuinely can't imagine watching this in a standard cinema format, let alone on an iPad or a phone. I've seen a comparison between the 70mm IMAX frame and the standard format, and it's literally cutting off half the image out of the shot. I just couldn't handle that. Secondly, this film demands a rewatch already, ideally in that 70mm format, because it's tackling such a massive foundational story. Even if you already know roughly what happens, you spend a lot of the runtime just getting your bearings on the shape of the thing and how Nolan is choosing to handle it. I want to go back as soon as possible to see it. The casting is excellent, nearly everyone nails their roles, with one exception, but I'll get to that. Matt Damon looks exactly like you'd expect a king to look after 20 years away at war, ripped but visibly worn down and tired. Anne Hathaway does a great job as Penelope. She doesn't have as much screen time as the others, but she makes the most of what she's given. I expected to dislike Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson in this, but they both deliver, particularly Holland, and Nolan actually spoke very highly of him as an actor and said he'd love to work with him again. Same goes for John Bernthal as Menelaus, who I also doubted going in. He gives a really strong physical performance, needling his wife Helen of Troy, the reason Odysseus' whole ordeal began in the first place. The film does feel like a huge star shows up every 10 minutes or so, which in most films would be distracting, but somehow it isn't here. Even Mia Goth, one of the best young actresses working right now, plays Penelope's scheming maid and barely gets any lines. I did mention one piece of casting that didn't work for me, and it's arguably the coolest character in the whole film. Agamemnon is genuinely one of the coolest things in this movie. His towering presence in all black armour is absolutely unreal, and for most of the runtime he barely says a word, and I was quietly hoping he'd stay silent, because I knew who was voicing him, and I had a feeling it would take me out of the moment. And sure enough, it's Benny Safdie, unmistakably a New Yorker, and when he speaks it just doesn't land for me.
To do. I had to physically get stronger because I didn't want to look like the armor was wearing me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That character needed a deeper, darker voice, not a Brooklyn accent. The score by Ludwig is, of course, epic and it really adds to the film, whether it be a battle sequence or the first meeting of Odysseus and his son. I don't think it's quite a standout compared to the likes of Oppenheimer and definitely not against Inception or Interstellar. It doesn't quite reach those heights and have that real standout like those do, but it's absolutely perfect for this film. To wrap up, I genuinely really enjoyed this film. It doesn't quite hit the emotional height of Interstellar for me, but it makes up for that in other ways. Themes of imperialism, guilt, and the sheer weight of knowledge. Knowing the war that you waged will bring your world crashing down. Knowing all your men will die except for you. Knowing you couldn't give every one of them the burial they deserved because you had to survive. Someone said that this might be Nolan's most accessible film, and even at 3 hours long, I think I agree with that. I can't wait to see it again. Right now, it's landed at around number 6 in my personal ranking of Nolan. I think it has more rewatch value than Oppenheimer for me, but we'll see how that second view changes things. I hope this film genuinely makes all the money in the world, hopefully another billion like Oppenheimer, so we keep getting films like this from the best working director that we've got. Let me know what you thought of the film in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.